This video is going to go over how to do an upload into Cityspan of participant data. So we've already gone over how to add site information and add youth data manually, but the upload process is a really good method and good tool to have for really large programs who are just updating information for the majority of their students, so updating things like grade every year or their consent status. So the upload is just a really efficient way of adding participant or updating participant information in Cityspan. And so that's what we're going to go over today. I've started here at the youth participants list in Cityspan. This is where you should really do the first step of the upload process, which is just to kind of confirm dates of birth for all returning participants. So any youth that you are kind of updating information for or adding additional information that you didn't have in Cityspan the previous year, you should just go through and make sure that they have a date of birth and that date of birth is accurate. So for example, we'll click into Leslie Nope's record in Cityspan. And go up to her birth date and make sure that there is one in here. And that it's fully accurate. And this should be done for pretty much all youth, but especially for youth that will be returning for this year's programming. And the reason that we ask you to do this first is because birth date is a piece of information that Cityspan uses to identify students. So if you were to identify or upload Leslie Nope this year with a different birth date, or if she didn't have a birth date earlier and now you are adding a birth date for her, Cityspan will actually create a new Leslie Nope in Cityspan, so basically duplicate that individual in Cityspan. And so it's really important to just make sure that you are keeping these birth dates in here and up to date and accurate, so that when you do upload youth, you're avoiding the potential of duplicating any youth, and you're also ensuring that you are able to identify youth of the same name, basically, if that is relevant for your program. But yeah, so birth date is very important. So step one of the upload is to just review existing youth and make sure that their birth dates are correct. So now we're going to go to the Insight Center to get started on the actual upload process and upload development. We're going to go to Measurement, Cityspan. Click on Step 2, Recording Participant Information, and then expand How to Upload Participants. At the bottom of this, you will find a participant upload template, which is what you're going to be using to do the upload of all the student data. So you can just click on that link and it'll download the template for you. The template is set up so that you can really easily add the information you need to and then just go ahead and get into Cityspan and do the upload. So we'll go through the template now and also how to upload this information. All right, so once you've downloaded the upload template from the Insight Center, this is what it's going to look like when you open it up. As you can see, it has a bunch of different columns with different pieces of information that you can record about your participants in Cityspan. It certainly doesn't include everything, but definitely includes the most important things. As you can see, some of the columns are highlighted, and these are required columns, columns of information that you need to enter. And these are required for the upload, but also highly recommended while you're adding participants manually as well. And again, if you are interested in seeing how to manually add youth participants to the database, a link to that video is in the description box below. All right, so I'm going to focus first on these required columns, what to enter, how to find the information, etc.
So the first column is site ID, which is Cityspan issued. So this is a piece of information that you would actually get from Cityspan itself. And what this does is it tells Cityspan where to put this information from the upload into which site it's going into. So the site ID is a 5-digit code that is distinct for each of the sites in Cityspan. So this is telling the database where to put this information. And I'll show you how to get that information now.
So I'm actually going to take you to the site ID from the login page, just because you're likely going to be kind of filling out the participant upload template kind of separately outside of the database first. So let's log in. And once you've signed in, you're going to click on the site that you're hoping to upload participant data to. And as you can see on the site information page, there's actually a little site ID field right next to the site name. And as I said, this is something that Cityspan issues to every new site in the database. It's always going to be a 5-digit number, and it's always going to be there from when you first log in, forever. So it's going to be a constant number. And what you can do is you can actually just copy it from here, and then paste it into your template. All right, so we can input site ID just by copying it here. And I'm just going to leave it there for now. It's definitely important that you're copying or you're pasting exactly what you've copied from the database, just because this information can go to a different site in Cityspan if you don't have the correct site ID in there. So just make sure that that's the accurate 5-digit number. So then the other 4 pieces of information, first name, last name, date of birth, and consent, are pieces of information that you would enter from your end. So first and last name and date of birth are 3 pieces of identifying information that are required for the upload. If you don't have first and last name in the template, as well as site ID, again, the upload won't work. So you have to at least have site ID, first name, and last name in order for the upload to be successful. Date of birth is a really important piece of identifying information, as we've gone over multiple times. Just helps us distinguish students and make sure that we're not creating duplicates in the database as well. The 5th and final piece of required information is consent. So this is something that, each of the sites that work with us receive a Boston After School and Beyond consent form to give permission basically for students to participate in the measurement work, for their data to be shared between the program and Boston After School and Beyond, as well as potentially with Boston Public Schools. So the consent form is an incredibly important piece of paperwork that the students have to fill out. And this is an opportunity to mark whether or not students have consent in Cityspan, which is a requirement of your work with Boston After School and Beyond. So those are the pieces of required information that you have to add. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of go through and start inputting data so that you can kind of see how this template works. And I'm going to do some of my favorite childhood characters. As you can see, I'm adding first and last name into their 2 different columns. That's super important because, as I said, without these columns filled in, the upload won't work. Oops. All right, so here are the 3 characters that I've chosen. I also want to make sure that their birth dates are added to here as well. And as I said, earlier in this video, I just want to reiterate that you should ensure that if Amelia, Sammy, and Sheila Ray are already in Cityspan right now and you're just kind of updating their grade information, for example, or making sure that they're going to be included in this year's roster, just make sure that the date of birth that you're inputting into this template matches what exists in Cityspan. All right, so now going through the rest of these columns, you can see that with race and gender, school names, some of the other demographic pieces of information, a little arrow pops up next to the cell.
And this allows you to kind of do a little drop-down menu to decide or to input their other sort of demographic information. You can certainly copy and paste this information from an existing Excel file you have, or you can write it in. You don't have to do the drop-down menu process. But basically, Cityspan only understands these fields in specific ways. So it only understands male, female, other, or specific race identifiers, Asian, Black, Hispanic. So it really only understands those. So if this information is input in any other way than exists in these drop-down menus, the database won't be able to read it, won't understand it, and won't upload that information. So here's an example of that. If I input African American, say, the template is actually designed to kind of give you a little error message if it's not in the drop-down menu that exists in the template. So just making sure that you are aware of the accurate pieces of information. All right, so I'm going to continue doing this. Again, I just typed that in and it was right. So school name is another place where you have a drop-down menu with all the different school name options. Language, grade is another one. So you can input those there. Okay, so then consent is another column that does have a drop-down menu as well. Basically, this is very similar to like binary code where a 1 is yes or true and a 0 is false. Or no. So in our case, if a student has a consent form, then you want to enter 1. And if they don't have a consent form, you want to enter 0. But it's either 1 or 0. Or if they don't have a consent form, you can also leave it blank. We've gone over what is required. We want to make sure that we are copying the site ID down all of the records that we have. So we have 3 students we want to upload. We want to make sure that there's a site ID for each of those 3 students. Otherwise, it's not going to work. So yeah, making sure you have site ID, first and last name for the upload to work, date of birth to identify the students, and consent to say whether or not that student has permission to participate in measurement work. All these other pieces of information are highly recommended if you have them, but certainly not required for the upload. All right, so I'm going to save this as a new document. Tutorial upload test. Save that. And then we'll go into Cityspan and I'll show you how to upload.
All right, so to get to the upload module, which we're going to do from the login page here, and I'll show you how to get to it after if you're already logged in as well. But just click Enter System, and again, click on the relevant site that you are interested in uploading to. And then what you're going to want to do is actually go back out to the site list tab on the left here. And that's when you're going to finally see the upload tab on the left as well. And clicking on that is actually going to pop up a new window. The tool itself is pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to choose the file that you want. You're going to select participant upload because that's the data we're uploading right now. We're uploading participant data. And then you're going to click on begin upload. It's going to take a bit to read through all the data. So this is what it's going to look like if your upload has been successful. It's going to be all in green and all of your information will have been uploaded. And if you follow the template, make sure you're adding all of the required pieces of information and making sure that you're using the items that are already listed in the drop-down menus in the template from the Insight Center. This is what you'll come back with. This green, wonderful, everything is all set message. But sometimes, an error does exist in the upload. You may have perhaps spelled something incorrectly or forgotten a piece of required information. things like that. So sometimes you will be faced with an error, and just to kind of prepare you for that and make sure that you know what to do in those situations, here are a few common errors that you might run into. Here are a few errors that you might run into as you're doing the upload process and just how to fix them, how to address them. So the first one is missing required fields. So this occurs when you haven't input information into the 3 required columns: site ID, first name, and last name. So these are these are the 3 at minimum pieces of data that you need to add to the upload in order for it to work in Cityspan: the site ID, the first name, and the last name. What it does is this error actually returns to you an Excel sheet with the fields or the records, the rows in the Excel sheet that have missing required information. So it doesn't actually tell you exactly where the missing information is. It just tells you that here are the rows in which you're missing that information. So if, for example, you forgot to add a first name somewhere or a last name somewhere, just in like 1 or 2 rows, it'll show you where those rows, or what records that happened with, so that you can fix it and then actually just upload it from this Excel sheet. It also tells you how many records were uploaded or were returned. So let's say, for example, 27 out of 28 of the records that you see here as missing required fields actually had all of the pieces of information, but only one of them was missing, site ID, for example, for whatever reason. The 27 records that were complete will automatically be uploaded into Cityspan, so you don't have to worry about that. But it will tell you that one of the records was returned with the error, and so you just have to fix that record and re-upload that information. The other error that is commonly run into is this invalid enumeration, which basically means that you've entered data incorrectly into one of these columns. So race, gender, language, grade. So all of those you input a piece of information. So let's say, for example, you put African American instead of black, or F instead of female. The database doesn't understand those. So in this case, you just want to make sure that you are following the guide that the drop-down menus in each of those columns contains. And in this, kind of similar to the missing required fields error, this also sends back an Excel sheet that shows you which rows have incorrect information. So it just allows you to kind of take a look and see which rows you need to fix. And again, anything that's correct will be uploaded automatically, and you'll only see the sort of rows that had invalid information, and you just have to fix those and re-upload them. Okay, so this is another really popular error that comes up, and this is really when you're not using the template as it stands from the Insight Center. So this is if you end up kind of trying to upload your own document. You've altered the column headers, so you kind of fixed them to make sure that they have spaces between first and name or last and name, which is the example that you can see the screenshot of here. It happens if you've removed columns from the template. So if you try to upload things without certain columns, like maybe badge email address or consent, or any sort of columns that you haven't filled out. If you remove any of those, you'll get this error as well. And then, yeah, again, so as I said, if something other than the template is being used, so if you're trying to upload something straight from your own database or, from your own Excel documents. So this is another really popular an error that you can get. It can also look like this, where you basically just have a list of red that says that all these columns are missing. So those are all the most common errors If you have any questions on this or need any additional resources, feel free to visit the Insight Center at insight.bostonbeyond.org. Now let's get into how to create a program schedule.